So as I said at the beginning of this year, today was the Yahrtzeit of my late mother. And I feel it a big schus just to speak about my mother, or my father, and that entire generation of Holocaust survivors. So my mother and father were both born in the same little shtetl in Hungary, in Salish. They didn't really know each other before the war. They married in Fettenwald in Germany under the auspices of the Kloisenberger Rebbe after the war. And that was in a duration which we cannot even understand. They're godless. So going through Gehenna, my mother lost her grandparents, her parents, the very same day they arrived in Auschwitz. And she and one brother out of 5 were sent to life. 3 other siblings, parents, grandparents, were immediately sent to the gas chambers and to the crematorium. She passed away 4 years ago, and she left more than 500 descendants, all of them shomer Torah or mitzvahs, as I mentioned before. She was an amazing woman, extremely intelligent. She loved Torah. And in Minchas Osha Masechet Avos, I explained the expression, Hu hoyu oimer. And in Masechet Avos, this is a refrain again and again, Hu hoyu oimer. And I explained, Hu hoyu oimer is not something he once said. Each of these great Tanoim said hundreds of halachas and teachings and divrei musar. Hu hoyu oimer means this was his motto. This was the way he lived. This was what his life symbolized, reflected. That is hu hoya oimam. So I think of all the divrei Torah and all the thoughts I heard from my mother, probably the most significant, and she said this many times, why is it before we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, V'yohavtu Hashem Elokecho, the bracha before Kriya Shema is Ohev Amo Yisrael, Haboicha B'Yami Yisrael B'Yahavo. Because the very first posuk in Parashat Shoina is V'yohavtos Hashem Elokecha B'chol Avavcho B'chol Nafshecho B'chol Moedecho. And Chazal's interpretation B'chol Nafshecho is Afilu Noitel Es Nafshecho. You need to give away your life loving a Kodesh Baruch Hu. B'chol Moedecho, one of the interpretations is B'kol Mido V'Mido. So when things go great, you thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When tragedy strikes, believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you and thank Him. So how could one achieve this level of Ahavas Hashem? It is only if we appreciate and feel how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us, then we could reciprocate and love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is the way my mother lived, with an intense love and kirvas Elokim. So, my mother's favorite posuk in Tehillim was, Ani tomed imcha, ochazto biyad yamini. That was her favorite posuk in Tehillim, and that is kirvas Elokim, ochazto biyad yamini. Feeling that HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds our hand while we walk through life. We are always together, feeling the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and walking through life feeling that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is holding our hand, like a parent is holding the hand of his little child and just taking him safely to where he needs to be. So Ahavas Hashem was something that was so much part of her life, and she never complained, never. So 16 years ago, and I will never forget that moment, I was in the middle of davening a Shana Rabbah, and I was notified that my mother had a stroke and she's on the way to the hospital. So I wrapped things up and I rushed to the hospital, and she had a debilitating stroke. Miraculously, she overcame, but since that event, she was somewhat handicapped, and her left side wasn't totally functioning. And in her later years, when people used to ask her, how do you feel? She used to say, I don't hear very well, and my knees are causing me trouble. I can't really use my left hand, but I am great. this is my knee, this is my shoulder, this is my ear. It's not me. She used to say, I'm great. Things are great. I feel wonderful. Well, when you're 88 years old and you're after a stroke, you're not doing that great. But the way she saw it, she always said, I am doing great. Things are wonderful. Well, my knees are bothering me. My shoulder isn't working. I don't hear that well. I have some difficulty reading, but I'm great. So appreciating the gifts of life and chazdei shomayim in every circumstance, and thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu and feeling the closeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu every day and every moment of your life, that is what we learned from my mother. So this shir today is dedicated, and if I could share some of her thoughts and some of the things we learned from her, it's a big schus for me, and it should be le'ilui nishmosa. So the Torah we learned today, and the Torah I learn every day, is dedicated le'ilui nishmosa of Moras Fradl, Bas Rabbi Yonis Binyamin HaKoyen. She was a Bas Kohen. And my father once got Zeroya L'chayayim V'keva from the Kloisenberger Rebbe in merit of his wife. Because you could give Matnas Kohana to the husband of a Bas Kohen. And Zeroya L'chayayim V'keva is Mutar Lazar, but it gives to a Kohen. And I remember when my father came home with a box with chunks of meat, Zeroya L'chayayim V'keva, and my mother was horrified. What am I going to get? I never saw this in my life. What am I going to do with this? But she took care of it as a good wife. And that is Zeroya L'chayayim V'keva that my father got from the Kloisenberger Rebbe because his wife was a Bas Kohen. Shetanuach b'sholom al mishkova. She should be a Meretz Yosef for the family and for Klal Yisrael. We should only share b'soyres tovos. So I'm on my way to the Suda of the Achnos Sefer Torah in memory of my mother. B'soyres tovos. And we should be zorcha b'kora b'yameinu to see pnei Moshiach tzedkeinu b'mheru v'yomeinu amen.